So my name's Alexander ZHOU. I'm a computer science student in my third year. I'm also a PhD student. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Australia. I got my undergraduate degrees from Australia as well. And at HKUST, my supervisor is Professor Wei Chen. So a little bit briefly about my research. My topic mainly that I'm working on right now is community detection on social networks. So a network consists of multiple users connected to each other by some sort of relationship, think something like Facebook. And network operators who operate these social networks or whatever are interested in being able to identify users who are grouped together in some kind of community. So why do you want these communities? They're often used for the purposes of recommendation. People in the same communities might like the same things. And they're also used for general network and health analysis. So a network with more communities is probably going to be better in the long run. So the concept of a community, this is quite clear to us as humans, but if you think about it, it's actually quite subjective and hard to define in terms of something concrete. So on the network I have on the left, if I gave each of one of you a pen and asked you to circle what you think the communities are on this network, I'm sure we would all have different solutions. So what do I do for research? Firstly, I want to be able to find the exact specifications of communities. So I want to be able to concretely define them so I can feed that into a computer. I'm interested in finding special types of communities, maybe communities where people are diverse, maybe communities where people are actually close together physically in the real world. And because I'm a computer science student, I'm interested in optimizing algorithms to find the fastest way to find all of these communities that I feed into the computer. So in my 3 years, I've currently published 2 top conference papers in this area. So why did I choose to come to HKUST? I think for most students, the most obvious and biggest reason is the university's reputation. This is consistent. The university, as we saw earlier, is consistently rated very highly in global rankings. And particularly of interest to me is the fact that it is one of the top young universities in the world. You know, it's trending in the right direction, let's say. Second reason, I can work with some of the best researchers in the world. My research group that I work with is excellent. My supervisor is world-renowned in this field. And I'm also provided state-of-the-art infrastructure such as GPUs, and we have 100 terabytes of memory to work with. I'm given this infrastructure for my experimentation results. And importantly, my research group has a very strong structure and hierarchy. What does that mean? That means when I joined the research group, I got to talk with senior PhD students. They helped me develop as a researcher. And since I've entered my 3rd year, I'm helping new students develop as a researcher. And this is really, really awesome. And on a more personal level, why I chose to come to Hong Kong. Firstly, the campus is excellent. If you haven't seen images of the campus, it's great. But importantly, Hong Kong suits me as a person. So the food, the culture, everything about that is great to me. So how has HKUST helped me grow as a researcher? They've provided professional and personal development classes, which are important to figure out how to actually communicate with people. They invite field leaders and world-renowned researchers to provide both seminars online and in person on campus. And they've also supported me as I've traveled to other areas in the world to present my work at conferences. As you can see, there's an image of me presenting in person, and unfortunately, the second image was a top conference in my field called VLDB. Unfortunately, last year it was moved online, so I had to present online. But yeah, the university supported me in all my conference work. I've been asked to share a little bit about the research experience and what was a very memorable moment for me as a researcher. So I've decided to discuss the process of me getting my first top-tier paper. So how did I build a paper? What was the process? The first thing, I of course had to find a research problem. I'd say this is pretty paramount in having a final product. And it's very important that you are thorough in your research and make sure no one else has addressed this problem. You don't want to tread on other people's feet, or at the very least be able to improve upon their solution. So I find my first solution. I take that solution all happy to my supervisor and the group that I work with, and they just tear it down. They say it's awful, and they tell me, you need to fix this, 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 and this if you want to have a chance. So I do fix that, and that. And they say the new solution needs to improve that way in some other way. So we repeat this process basically ad nauseum for about months, maybe even years. And then once you have a product that you're happy with, you submit that paper to a conference. And then unfortunately, at the conference or the journal, the anonymous reviewers will tell you why they don't like the work as well. And then you have to be able to address their comments. Luckily, we managed to address their comments to their satisfaction, and that's how we ended up with a research paper. And if you think about it, this is something really, really cool. Well, I managed to come up with a solution that no one else has ever come up with before. This is all me and the people that I work with, and that's sort of awesome. Furthermore, I talked about I like living in Hong Kong personally. Why do I like living in Hong Kong? Firstly, Hong Kong is really, really diverse, and there's a lot of different things to do. So that's a picture of Disneyland. If you've wanted to go to Disneyland before, you can go to Disneyland. Also, that nature sort of like pond, that is actually a hiking track that is 2 minutes away from our campus. So campus is situated in a great location. And secondly, the food's fantastic. You may have heard stories of Hong Kong's culinary delights before. It has a mix of both Chinese food, a mix of Western cuisines, and the Asian fusion, I want to say, a bit of everything. It's awesome. Finally, I've been asked to give a bit of advice to new students. Of course, advice will always be subjective. This is just something that I think is helpful. So the first advice I would give to people looking to do a postgraduate degree is the supervisor fit. I recommend that you find a supervisor who fits with your personality, because they are going to be your boss for 4 years. It's very rare that you get to pick your boss. So this is a great opportunity to find someone you like. If you like being pushed, and I do mean really pushed, like call you at 1 a.m. in the morning pushed, you can find a supervisor who wants to do that. Or if you want to work independently, you can find a supervisor who's more hands-off. And this, of course, goes by both ways. You don't want to be someone that your supervisor doesn't like, because that's not going to be a fun 4 years. The second piece of advice I would give you is finding research topics. My recommendation always to new students when they're asking for research topics is, when reading research papers, find 3 areas that you think you could beat this paper in somehow or improve this paper. That's usually how you start your next topic. And secondly, to identify your strengths as a researcher and marry that with what you actually like to do. And then that sort of subsection, hopefully there is a subsection, but that subsection will guide you in what you want to do. And just a general tip, learn how to really use Google Scholar. And by use, I mean not just type in what you're looking for. I mean, follow specific researchers, follow cited trails, use filters and stuff like that to really find what you're looking for. And finally, as a tip to students who are about to enter the interview process for to find your supervisor, my tip would be to really market yourself. Know how to market yourself. Ultimately, you are selling yourself as a product to someone. And if they aren't engaged, they aren't interested, then they're not going to want to, quote unquote, buy you. The second tip would be to be able to answer everything. So be prepared for what I would say the most common questions are. I've seen a lot of people, when they get asked, why do you want to do a PhD? They don't have an answer immediately. Maybe have an answer to that. And finally, really engage with the interviewer if the interviewer is someone who you are interested to have as your supervisor, because you are going to effectively enter a 4-year relationship with someone. Being able to start that relationship on a good foot and make them really notice you in the interview process and remember you is very important. And engaging with them, asking them questions is a great way to do that. So that's all from me. I'll pass it back to Jeffrey, and good luck with your applications.